Good evening and welcome back to Sunday Evening Devotions. I'm sitting here on the pier and beside me is this life preserver equipment. And it reminds us of our story tonight that Joseph had been sent into Egypt by God to be a preserver of life. You may remember he had revealed himself to his brothers in Egypt. And then he asked them to bring his father and the household down to Egypt to preserve them. So they did. And what God does is confirm that this is his will, because as Israel, Jacob, gathers all the belongings in the household and gets ready to leave Canaan, he comes to the border there at Beersheba, and God appears to him in a dream and says that he should go. But it isn't though he's giving up Canaan forever. It is a sacrifice on his part, but he's coming to be reunited with his son, Joseph, and God is preserving life. And so Joseph brings them into Goshen, a land that was separate in the land of Canaan, the land of Egypt. And he tells his brothers to tell Pharaoh that they are shepherds, because the Egyptians didn't like shepherds, and that would keep them separate. What God is doing is preserving them from mingling with the Canaanites, as was happening, and preserving them in Egypt for this time period, sort of in exile, you might say, as they would grow into a nation and be preserved as a people away from the Egyptians. All this is to remind us that God prepares things in our lives, that God has sent his son Jesus to be a preserver of life for his people. And yes, we're in exile. We're in this world where things are done and sometimes unjustly, and we can look at the economy and what Joseph did in Egypt, because the land became Pharaoh's, everything became Pharaoh's. And yet, there's that kingship aspect where we see how Joseph is ruling, and it's a picture of Christ ruling for us. But the promise is the promised land. And that's where people would go back. And so Jacob asks that Joseph would promise to carry his bones back and bury him in Canaan. And again, it's the picture of our hope in heaven. And that's what we're about. We're about what we're in the future of going to the promised land that Christ has prepared for us. Joseph, a picture of a preserver of life. Well, that's good news. Good night.